The tragedy unfolded before the eyes of residents of the Italian capital and tourists in a prestigious part of Rome near the Colosseum. Part of the medieval Torre di Conti, an architectural gem and one of the symbols of the Eternal City, was reduced to rubble in an instant. This tower collapsed twice. First, parts of the facade began to fall off, and then it collapsed from the inside. A huge cloud of dust appeared, and the roof and floor of the tower turned into rubble. It all happened during maintenance work being carried out on the tower. Its external concrete elements began to crumble, causing the first part of the tower to collapse. The next collapse occurred an hour and a half later, this time inside. The building collapsed like a house of cards.
We sat a little bit over there, and we wanted to go to the Colosseum. Then we stopped there to get a drink, and we just sat outside. We were watching at the building, and it suddenly collapsed again.
Several construction workers were caught in a deadly trap. One of them suffered serious injuries and is in hospital. 2 others have already been discharged home, and a 66-year-old man who was seriously injured in the head and crushed by debris was unable to get out on his own, so firefighters had to intervene. The worker survived the first collapse of the tower and was in contact with him, but unfortunately the building collapsed again. The man was trapped under the rubble. After 11 hours of rescue operations carried out in extreme conditions, the injured man was successfully extracted, but unfortunately he died in hospital. The Italian Prime Minister offered her condolences, and experts are already working on site to explain the causes of the tragedy and assess the scale of the damage. The most important task was performed by the firefighters who rushed to save human lives. Now those who will assess not only the material damage, but also the scale of losses to Italian cultural heritage must do their job. Torre del Conti was built in 1238 on the orders of Pope Innocent III by his brother Riccardo Conti. It was built from the ruins of the imperial forts and served mainly defensive functions. Originally, it measured as much as 60 meters, which earned it the nickname of the Great Tower and made it a symbol of architectural power. This is, of course, a building that has witnessed 8 or 9 centuries of the Eternal City's existence. Something has collapsed that seems unbelievable, impossible for most Romans and tourists. The very centre of the city, the centre of ancient Rome, halfway along the Via dei Fori Imperiali. It is something difficult to imagine. In the Middle Ages, Rome was dotted with such towers, and the Torre del Conti was considered one of the most impressive and best preserved buildings from that period in Rome.
Conti, Torre dei Conti.
The Torre del Conti Tower, whose history dates back to the first half of the 13th century, can be said to be a valuable monument of Rome from the perspective that there are not many secular medieval monuments in the centre of the city, but rather church buildings on the road that must be taken from the Colosseum to Piazza Venezia. To continue on to the heart of Rome leads right past the Torre del Conti Tower. The tower was in use until 2006, when it was determined that it required urgent renovation, which was delayed, as it turned out, for too long. For many years I didn't see anyone taking care of this archaeological heritage. The tower stood there without any supervision, without any renovation. Now, all that remains of its former glory are the ruins, and architects, conservators and guardians of Italian national heritage are wondering how to preserve at least part of this priceless testimony to history.